What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. Is load management ruining the NBA? Up next, Split Cow! I'm dying to talk some hoops, so let's get straight into the topic at hand. We had a crazy Kyrie Irving report come out today, and I think it proves that Michael Jordan ruined the NBA. First, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. We just zoomed past 300 and we're headed for 4, and then we're headed for 5, and I appreciate all the support. A lot of good basketball minds I've seen in the comments, and I've enjoyed interacting with y'all. So I appreciate any support you can give me. It means a lot. But let's talk some hoops here. The report from Rick Bucher, who I believe is on ESPN, I'm not 100% sure on that, but he said that Kyrie Irving in his contract wanted it to say that he wasn't required to play more than 60 games and he didn't have to play back-to-backs. Kyrie Irving has since come out and denied this report. They posted the clip on Twitter. Kyrie Irving responded with a cap. Someone raising their hat, basically saying this isn't true. So when we're talking about this, I don't want to look at this as much from a Kyrie Irving perspective, as much as I want to just talk about load management, because I think that that's a huge controversial topic that is something I haven't had a chance to address on this channel. So it's a good time for me to do so because I have a lot of thoughts on this. And I think it dates back to Michael Jordan, and stay tuned for that because I think this is an interesting take that I think a lot of you will agree with, but maybe hadn't thought of before. So Kyrie Irving has not played 60 games since he's been a Brooklyn Net. So to me, I don't know why he would feel the need to put that in his contract that he doesn't have to play 60 games, because he never has since he's been a Brooklyn Net. Also, I don't think Kyrie Irving has a lot of leverage when you're talking about contract negotiations, because I don't know that anyone out there is dying to give Kyrie a 4 or 5 year max. I think the Brooklyn Nets offered him potentially a 3-year or a 2-year with a team option or something like that, some sort of max in that capacity. What we'll see from Kyrie Irving this year is probably Kyrie Irving's most reliable season we've seen in a while, as far as playing and as far as, not taking nights off, because I think the one thing that will get to guys, even a guy like Kyrie Irving, who goes against the grain and thinks about things a little differently than most people do, the one thing that gets to Kyrie Irving, the one thing that gets to all of us, is when it affects your dollars. And this Kyrie Irving negotiation, when he went there thinking he was going to get this max contract and thinking that he was going to be a part of the Nets' future, and he wasn't offered it, that's going to play with your mind. So he's going to have to go out there and prove that he's reliable and prove that he can play a full season and impact the game. But I want to get off the Kyrie Irving topic a little bit and talk about load management, because there's so many takes when it comes to load management. A lot of people hate it. Most people hate it. When you're looking at it from a fan perspective, when you're looking at it from a media perspective, and for obvious reasons, when you're talking about it from a media perspective, when you're looking for content to talk about, it is much easier to talk about an NBA game that includes LeBron James than it is one without him. And when you're talking about stars and you're talking about players sitting out, anytime you need content, need things to talk about, and want to watch games and evaluate games and analyze games, you want to have the stars in those games. But more importantly, from a fan perspective, how many of you out there, I know at least for me personally, one of my favorite gifts and one of the things I looked forward to most was my dad would always take me to one Celtics game a year. I mean, I'm a Celtics fan, but it would often be in Indiana. But I looked forward to that, and sometimes it was a Christmas gift, and sometimes it was, if it was a different time of the year, it would just be this special occasion that me and my dad would go to. And when you're talking about load management, and for so many kids that their dream has been to go to an NBA game, and it's been to see LeBron play, especially in away games, or Kawhi Leonard, guys like that. When you always have wanted to see them play, and then they sit out, that can be devastating. This can be something that you've wanted for years and years, and that you've always looked forward to get the chance to watch these players play, and then they sit out. The problem is, when you look at it from a team perspective, from an NBA team, if you're looking at it from the front office, the coaching staff, the training staff, they would argue that this is for the betterment of the team. And when you're looking at the NBA and we're talking about the NBA and these teams, you have to realize that it's a business. And if any of you work in the business world, ultimately, most organizations run in a way that is most profitable. Not necessarily what's best for the employees or best for the customers, but what's most profitable. How much can they, this sounds very negative, how much can you abuse and use your employees without having to add new ones, that they survive and you keep the employees, but also you make the most money possible and don't have to pay as many people. So that's the balance that you're looking for when you're talking about the NBA. What is best for business? And the NBA is looking for ways for their players to be able to play when it matters most, which is playoff games in April, May, and June. Make the finals. So the problem with that thinking is that we haven't seen a reduction in player injuries. That's the problem. If you said to me, and here's where we'll talk about something else and we'll transition sports a little bit. When you're looking at the NFL has put a bunch of rules in place to protect quarterbacks. You can hardly touch a quarterback, but we've seen the amount of quarterback injuries reduce. So to me, yes, it sucks that you can't hit a quarterback, but would I rather watch a game with Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, guys like that in it? Absolutely. The problem with the NBA is that we've went to load management, but we haven't seen our stars getting having less injuries. They still are getting injured at about the same rate that they used to. So ultimately, your solution hasn't solved the problem. A lot of teams force players to sit out. Now, one thing that you'll hear a lot of people say is that players nowadays don't have the same love for the game. And I think to an extent that's true. I think there are plenty of NBA players that aren't there because they love the game of basketball. I think that's pretty clear. There are guys that you clearly see that just love the game. LeBron goes out he posts videos all the time of him in his backcourt just shooting hoops. Kevin Durant loves playing basketball. You see him playing all the time. You see him playing pickup, all sorts of things like that. So you're talking about guys that do love the game of basketball, and those are usually your uber successful ones. But there are guys who certainly see it as more of a job and more of a business. And if you, in your personal career, were given the opportunity to make more money but play less, you would certainly take that, would you not? Not play less, work less. If someone said to me, you can take one more day off a week, and your salary, these NBA salaries are crazy, but your salary stays the same, why wouldn't I do that? So if you see basketball as a job, or NBA basketball as a job and not necessarily love for the game, then yeah, if you have the opportunity to sit out, you're going to take it. But here is where I think my biggest takeaway is. I think that the way and we'll get to my Michael Jordan point right here. Michael Jordan won championships and was such a winner and an elite player that it almost ruined the mindset that we have as NBA fans, NBA media, and NBA players. Because when you're talking about players' greatness, what do we evaluate them on? Championships. You know what doesn't matter when you're talking about championships? A 7 o'clock game against the Pacers in the middle of January. So the media And it kind of has to do with LeBron, but when you're talking about the GOAT debate, which didn't really used to be a thing pre-Michael Jordan, but about two championships into Michael Jordan's career, you heard a lot of people calling him the GOAT before he had his 6 rings. Because the way that we used to evaluate who was the greatest player was by watching the game and saying, this guy's the greatest player I've ever seen. This player does this, X, Y, and Z better than anyone I've ever watched. Once Michael Jordan retired and LeBron James' career started, you heard so much hype about LeBron, and the media coverage of him was that of which, if he didn't win titles, he was seen as a failure. And that's why we see, so many players team hop. We see Kevin Durant leave Oklahoma City to go to Golden State. We see LeBron leave Cleveland to go Miami. And then James Harden leave Houston these guys are trying to get championships because of the standard that Michael Jordan set and the way that the media has now covered that standard. And we criticize players so heavily if they didn't win a championship. Karl Malone, John Stockton, Charles Barkley, guys who were great all-time players but didn't get that ring. And we see that how much that hurts their legacy. So when you're talking about load management as an NBA player, if you have the ability to play 50 games and feel like you're more well rested and you don't run out of gas in the playoffs, if next year LeBron plays 40 games and wins a title, no one is going to remember that he only played 40 games. But it's the devaluing of the regular season that we've seen and the overvaluing of championships and rings. Now, we haven't seen a lot of success when you're talking about that, because when you're looking at like Kawhi Leonard, for instance, and the Clippers, something about their chemistry and playing in big games, and then you talked about the Nets with James Harden, Kyrie, Kevin Durant. Now, I know injuries had some to do with that, but chemistry in the NBA is so important, and we've devalued that to an extent, thinking we can just put players together and they're just going to go win a title. But load management is bad for the NBA, but I do think it's because the media narratives are so strong on winning championships and the importance of that and the devaluing of the regular season that as a player, that's the only way your mind can think. That's the only thing that's been pushed in your mind, that winning championships is the only way to prove you're great. Nothing else matters. Winning MVPs doesn't matter as much. Because these guys are sitting out. Kawhi will never have a chance to win an MVP because he just doesn't play enough games. But Kawhi Leonard took his Raptors team to a championship, won Finals MVP. I think unfortunately, we hold our players now with the media coverage to a standard that has created kind of a toxic basketball environment. And obviously, we still love the game. We still love the NBA. But we've created a monster that I don't know how you come back from. We're going to see this continue to happen, and they're going to try to reduce games in the NBA. And to me, as a historian of the game and someone who studies, it wants to compare statistics, compare accomplishments, all those kinds of things. It's tough to compare a 60-game season to an 81-game season. If you reduce the amount of games, then you're never going to have records broken. And that's kind of sad to me when you look at it from that perspective. So I don't want to see a reduction in the amount of games. What I want to see is an increased importance on the regular season. And I don't necessarily know how you do that unless you reduce the amount of playoff teams that you have going to the playoffs. But all they've done since Adam Silver is create this play-in tournament to where even more teams get to play and even more games are happening. So we'll see what the NBA does to try to combat load management. But to me, it's a result of the culture of the NBA and the importance placed on championships versus accolades and stats. That's all I got for you today. We'll see you soon. Cyborg out.